Alright, now that we have all of our segments of wing pieces cut out, we're going to start marrying up just a couple little bit of sections. I find it just helps out to, especially since you have uneven amounts, if you marry up some of the thinner sections to equal the size of the thicker sections. So once you get your heavier pieces and your longer pieces married up, you're going to want to stack them on top of each other. This is kind of like the blacker sort of old way of doing the mixed wings. And then I kind of build a little bit of taper into it as well while I'm doing this, just so it has the kind of traditional shape. You can do it if you want, you don't have to by any means. It'll look good either way. So then measure it up, and you're going to want to make sure you're kind of holding it back where you're past the tie-in point, so that way when you put your softer, shorter materials on, you definitely have enough on the ends that when you tie them on, you'll be able to grab a bit of them and tweak them into place. And make sure you have enough, because you always end up with less than what you thought you would have to work with there. So then again, I start, stacking them according to length and or my taste. So get them all stacked up. You can kind of stroke them together a little bit, and the tips will kind of marry, or the strips will marry a little bit, just so it's easier to hold on to. So again, triple check that your length is going to be okay, and all the pieces are sitting where they need to be. A little awkward shot of the wing. So it's looking good, so make sure everything's sitting okay, and then what I do is quadruple check, obviously, and then soften the butts by just sucking on them a little bit or working some saliva into them. Not a whole lot, just enough so they soften up a bit. And then you'll collapse them by pinching the butts with your fingers. So then hold it up and take a turn over it. And I do the near side. Some people do the far side first. The near side just seems to work better for me, so do whatever works for you. And you can see there, as I tied it on, I quickly pushed it back over into place. You don't want to just keep reefing on it and twisting it, because then it'll keep pulling. So pretty much after each wrap, you want to tweak them back into place. Some of it's going to be tied a little bit on the sides, but it's not going to be the end of the world. You can tweak them back up. So once you have the near side on, it should look something like that. And the far side is done the exact same way, so just repeat the process. Make sure everything's sitting pretty. And again, tighten it up. As you tighten, push them back up into place. It's hard to see, but I'm actually tightening it with my pinky and my ring finger of my right hand. I put the thread down through there, so as I tighten with those fingers, I can tweak back up with my right. And it should look like that. And they're not going to look exactly the same, but they should be somewhat close as long as you stacked them in a similar method. And you can actually go in there and split them apart with your scissors. You don't have to do that. You can take a cards fall where they may sort of position, but I spread them out a little bit. Looking pretty good. And now for the crest. I find it easy just to put it on top and just pinch it in place and then strap it on there. I use quite a few good wraps, just really tighten down on that. Helps out a lot so it doesn't want to move and roll on you once you start messing with the other bits in the head. Tying in hand, you're pretty much going to end up with a larger head than you want. I'm not a huge fan of the micro head, so I don't even worry about it at all. And like I said, in hand it's gonna be larger than you want. Plus, if you're using gossamer, you got 3 strikes against you right there. So now I'm just putting on the cheeks. I start with the far side. and then put the near side on. I do it that way just because you have a wrap or two of thread on the far side, so it's going to hold good. And then you can do 1 or 2 wraps on the near side, and that should hold it in place plenty fine. So once you get them in place, just kind of getting them to sit right. And then I trim the stems just so you don't nudge them by accident and shoot the cheeks out of the position that you wanted them in. Now time for the horns. I did the over-the-top buggy antenna style. It's definitely different trying to put those on in hand. They're awkward in a vise, let alone in hand. So I just kind of strapped them on and then tweaked them into the position that they needed to be. Obviously, I had previously matched them up and put the curves into them that they needed to have, and pinched them and at the tie-in points, so that way once I get them on there, they're both right where they need to be, and they should line up perfectly once you do eventually get them in place. So just fidget with them till they do what you want. And just get them in there and they should sit fine eventually. And just make sure everything's sitting the way you want it. And then I put a little coat of head cement or fingernail polish or whatever you use. Put a good coat on there and give it time to dry. And just make sure everything sits pretty. Now we're going to do a hurl head, and this was actually the first time I've tried this, and it actually worked out pretty well. It's kind of a combination of a couple different methods. This loop idea was told to me by Ryan Houston, so just get a loop of gossamer and or whatever thread you want and tie a loop on there. It's just like wrapping a guide. So once you get that on there, put your hurl on. And then here I'm going to do a double half hitch. So just make a loop and then feed your tag end of your thread through the loop twice. And I caught a little bit of the throat there, so now go ahead and start tightening that up, making sure it sits where you want. You don't want it moving around. It's better if it sits right on top of each other. Tighten it up really good, and it shouldn't come undone while you're doing this little bit here. Make sure your loop's sitting where you need it to be, and trim your tag end of your thread off. Now you're going to want to put a pretty good coat of head cement on I put it on the near side just so it doesn't trap down that loop at all. And put it on pretty thick, and then you're going to want to let it dry to pretty much just before it starts to get hard. You want it really gummy. So once it's at that point, you can wrap your hurl. And Ryan had mentioned that this was a fidgety maneuver in a vise, let alone in hand. So just wrap your hurl up, and then once you get it right at the end there, you're going to feed that little tiny piece back through that loop. You can see how much I was struggling with it. Obviously with practice I'm sure it gets easier. And it just doesn't want to cooperate. So just keep messing with it. I could see this being, you want to be very gentle because that stem is very thin. So just be very gentle, let it do what it needs to do, and then just slowly pull it till it slides back and through underneath that head. I'm pretty sure the amount of cement that I put on the top and side and bottom will hold that hurl no problem. Go ahead and cut that off, and then stroke the butts of the hurl with a little bit of moistened fingers, and I use a scalpel just to trim the butts, and that gives you a nice flat mom style disc head. And just take your time, be very, very, very careful. The last thing you want to do is cut your hurl at that point. So I kind of go in at an angle and then flatten the blade out against the head, and then slowly just wiggle and let the blade do the work. Don't force it. Slowly, just, once in a while, move the blade forward and kick all the junk out that you've cut. So you should be pretty good, and once you get down to the stems, you're going to just take your time and get out your scissors, and I find it easier just to trim with the scissors. Do one at a time, don't do them both, and be very gentle with it. And just clear all the other junk out of there and do any other little minor trimmings as you need to do. So you can see I'm just taking my time getting it all out of there. And you can use your nail to kind of push the little bits back in there. And just keep working at it. And then once you do get everything out of there that you need, I just take a little bit more head cement and work it into the front of the head. I put quite a bit on. I want it to soak in pretty deep into those butts just to hold everything on there. And also, since you stroke back the hurl, a little bit of it should soak into that stem, the front part of the stem of the hurl, and hold that into place. And do a little bit of minor preening and house cleaning, and you should be done. So really hope this is going to help somebody, and don't claim to be an expert at this by any means, and I'm learning every single fly I do, so, and my methods are changing, so hopefully this shows you that it's not that hard to tie in hand. It's just a different skill set, and if you put a little investment of time in there, you'll be good, and hopefully you'll get the hang of it. Thanks for watching, guys.
Atop the crags and cliffs the air is thin, so we'll find a mountain path on down the hill. Meet me where the snow melt flows. It is there, my dear, where we'll begin again.